Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today I'm gonna show you something special. Well, maybe not so special for some of you. It is a free tool that I'm using when I need to build a network infrastructure that will help for small businesses, and you could actually do a infrastructure for a enterprise level. So with no further ado, let's get started. Just a small disclaimer before we start. This is not a sponsored video. It's something that I came across in my IT job, and it's something that I'm using for the past year and a half. I hope this tool will help many of you, and it's quite easy to use. So let's get into it. To get started, you'll have to navigate to yworks.com. Um, of course, you can have a look at the website, but to download the software, we actually have to scroll all the way down. And under products, you will have to click on YED Desktop. It will bring you to this page. You'll have a download button. You also have a short video to show you how you can structure your infrastructure. Well, you hit on download. You can select from Windows, Mac, or Linux. I'm using a Windows machine, so I already installed it, but I'm gonna do it again anyway. And after it's downloaded, you can obviously follow the installation process. Once you're done with the installation, you will find a shortcut on your desktop that will look like this, YED Graph Editor, and we will open that application. And we will start with a new document. Now there are a lot of couple of things that you can play around with, which is the shape, nodes, but what we're interested in is the part of IT. So under this selection here, we have computer and network. We can expand that a little bit. And those are the icons that are available for the free edition. If I'm not mistaken, on the website, if we go back and under products, you could try for free different types of files. Obviously, it will ask you to sign in with Google, GitHub, LinkedIn, or with an email, but you will get access to Java templates, .NET templates, developer templates, and depending on the work or the infrastructure you want to build, if it's not network and it's something else for application, for example, you can very well take advantage for the free trial, which I think it's 60 days, if I'm not mistaken. Somewhere was. Don't take my word for it. I think I've seen a promotion a couple of days ago which stated it's 60 days, but even so, 30 days is more than enough to work on a project. And then if your employer is satisfied, obviously it should cover for, let's say, a pay subscription. So let's get back to the software, and I will show you what I've did for the company I'm working for. Luckily, the company was doing great, and they want to build the second office that will accommodate 50 employees, 15 new employees. And this office needs a network infrastructure that should be ready by the end of this year. So to start in that regard, obviously for a network infrastructure and to have the industry standards, you will need to start with two ISPs. Why two ISPs? Well, two ISPs will help you with the redundancy. Let's say one of the ISP will have issues, then you can have a router or a switch that will fail over to the second one. So for businesses, in some cases, they might have three or more ISPs. Now once we have the ISPs, we can add our routers. Each ISP comes with its own router, but we will use something that the owner actually asked that will help us build a tunnel as well. This is again for the office that we are building, and we will use a FortiGate. And not one, we're gonna have two, again for the same purpose of redundancy. And from FortiGate, we will have our switches, again for the same purpose of having redundancy. Now I'll show you in a second how this will all work. We will have ISP1 and ISP2 to the first FortiGate, and then we will have the same ISPs 2 and 1 this I never understood. Okay, so once you drag an arrow, you need to see these arrows or borders before releasing, because otherwise if you release it here it will keep on moving. So if you hit escape, it will go away and you can actually start over like this. The first thing is to configure the FortiGates. This would probably be by case, maybe you're gonna use something else. But from the two FortiGates, let's say one will fail, we're gonna have the second one take over. The same thing we're gonna do from the FortiGate, which is also the firewall. We will connect them to our two switches, like so. So no matter if, let's say, worst case scenario, you have a one ISP failing and you have a FortiGate failing, you still have one of the ISPs and another FortiGate sending or managing the traffic for all your routers. Between the routers, we will have between the switches, we will also have a redundancy, because if one of the switches will fail, we need the other ones to pick up the slack. Now, in a more advanced environment, you would most likely have a load balancer. You can actually, if you have a smart switch, you can actually design that or configure that to be one of the load balancing. But switches also come in many forms. So you have layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. Again, this is more for a how to structure on paper, not as how to configure the switch. Now that we have this out of the way, obviously you will have to connect your devices. But before connecting your devices, you might have printers or a network attached storage. You might have servers that will handle your GPOs or group policies as we call it. And of course, you might have company mobile phones that will connect to APs, the access points. In our case, since the office is quite big, we're gonna have each room will serve a different purpose. But before going into that, if you take a closer look at what we've built so far, you will notice that I made a mistake, and I made that mistake on purpose because I would like you to focus a little bit and try to spot that mistake. I will much appreciate if you can comment what the mistake is. As you can see, we have the 240 gates that are communicating, most of them with one switch. However, on this switch is just communicating with the upper switch. I will give them a name later on, but let's assume this is switch 1, switch 2, 3, and 4. Now, if this fails, we can still have a redundancy by this switch going into this switch, switch 1 to switch 3, and switch 3 to switch 4. However, we could do something a lot better than that, which is connecting those two FortiGates with these switches. And this is quite bad. I'm not a good drawer anyway, but I'll try my best. So for the sake of redundancy, we are actually connecting everything, and don't worry about a loop, because since we're dealing with smart switches, could create a problem later down the line. It will be avoided. But if you're using an unmanaged switch, for instance, you might have issues. Now we have both FortiGates communicating with all four switches, and the four switches are communicating between them. So no matter which one fails in this scenario, they will all be connected at all time with the internet. With this out of the way, we will start building the departments. One of the interesting features that this software has, let's close this. You could use shapes, but we would like to have group nodes. Why group nodes? Because we can assign a number and have them connected to whatever devices we will assign. So this is a node. I can double click and go into it. And since we are inside the node, we can start building the room infrastructure. So we already know that we have the switches. What we need now to deploy is the clients, the access points, printers if any, and most likely you will have a cabinet or a server room where you will have your network attached storage and group policy servers. But let's start with the clients themselves. So in the first room, we will have 10 computers, and those 10 computers will be part of the support team. I'm not going to build it to be pretty because I will show you something interesting, something else that is interesting with the software. But for now, we know that we have 10 clients. Most likely they will have 2 or 3 company phones that will always be on premise. And of course, they will have a printer, and they will also have an access point. Now for the access point, the company decided to use UniFi 6 Pro. Maybe your company will use something else. That's up to you or your IT manager to decide on the equipment. But since we are on the node, I'm not going to create lines, individual lines, because it's going to be a spaghetti of lines going to the switches. But we will build this into a VM. This is how I like to do the infrastructure. From the switches, I'm going to have ports designated for VM1, VM2, VM3, VM4, which will separate each department. They will be able to connect with the internet, but they will not be able in certain scenarios to communicate between VMs, between departments. All right. To go back, we will hold Control and press Z, and we have our node here. We can move it if you want, and we will simply drag a line which will go to the switch, and it will go to this switch as well, and it will go to Right, so we have VM1. So let's actually rename. I'm gonna double click on this borderline here and say VM1, and we will say customer support. We also know exactly how it will go. And now we can go with number 2. So we will select a group node. We will paste it here somewhere. Doesn't really matter. Double click inside it. And for the back office, the second one will be the back office, where most of the critical thinking of the company, let's say, will take place. We will also have 10 clients. And instead of doing one by one, so instead of dragging them one by one, I will do a select all, Control C, Control V, and then move them around. Do it faster. Now on the back office part, everybody will have their own company phone, which will also be only on premise. None of those devices will leave the office. I should have done the same, Control C, Control V, but as you can see, I decided not to, because reasons. So, they're also gonna have a printer and an access point, and we're done with the second node or the second VM. So if we hit Control Z, it'll actually undo what I did. So maybe open it, double click on this structure view here. It will return us here. Click the plus, it will enlarge it, and then rename it VM2. VM2 is going to be back office. And of course we need to connect it to our switches. Let's highlight it once. Actually, you need to, this is the annoying part, you actually need to be on the border when it's selected with the nose, because if you're outside and you try to, let's say, take it from here, it will work no problem. Okay, so here we go. It's going to be a spaghetti nonetheless. Imagine if we had all those devices going through each switch. I would have a very bad, very bad time. But as I mentioned, we will have a solution for that to make it look prettier. This is just a raw format for now. Let's continue. We will assume that this part here is already a node, and this is going to be under the server room itself. Now let's make it look cleaner, and let's say this group 1 should be the server room. You can actually create a new node. I'm going to take this node, and then I'm going to select from the structure view on the left hand side by holding Control. I will select all the devices and click hold and slap it in. and let's make this box a little bit bigger, because we will have to add a couple of more things. Okay, I mentioned before that we will have a NAS, and we will have a NAS on site, and we will have another NAS to back up this NAS outside on the cloud. So let's say I don't have a cloud icon here, but let's say this is the cloud, and I can double click. If you click on it, you will have a bunch of options where you can change the color, change the position from here, whatnot, but I want to say this is the cloud. Make it a little bit bigger. And we know this cloud is going to also be backup NAS. So we know this NAS will communicate outside. Anyway, so we know it's communicated with each other. With that out of the way, let's leave it as it is. And since we don't have, well, actually, I think this is a server. Yep. We will have two servers that will communicate with the NAS and between each other. Okay, and also the NAS and the servers will communicate with each switch. So we will need another client here, and this client will manage the IoT devices or the cameras and the access control, that will allow you to clock in, clock out, and obviously enter the office. So let's name this one as well, IoT CCTV and access control. Now this, for security purposes, I would like to have a connection straight to the firewalls, and I do not want this to touch any of the network because this should be isolated. So the reason behind us building VMs is not only separate the department but also isolate it from the rest, even though it's going through all the switches and all the switches connected is connected between them. That doesn't mean that they will be able to, let's say, if they hack this user or client, they will not be able to, or a hacker actually knows his way, but it will be more difficult for the hacker to go through all those devices to, let's say, get access to a client where more critical company information is stored. With that out of the way, let's continue and let's build our third node. And this node, we will only have 5 clients, from which 2 will have a laptop, and they will all have a company phone. Of course, they will have a printer and an access point. Maybe your company will have a different acronym, but this is what we're gonna use. Right, so this as well will follow the same spaghetti. Okay, they're connected. Let's see the next one. The next one is going to be another node. And in this node, we will have only two TVs, a client that will be connected to the TVs, and an access point. Now this is going to be the conference room, and that's pretty much it. There's nothing. And this one is going to be the conference room. We know, anyway, we need to make a connection anyway. So let's connect it to one of the routers, switches, my bad. And last but not least, we will have another node where we're gonna have 4 devices, from which 2 will be, my bad, actually we will have 6 devices, and only 2 will be stationary and 4 will be laptops. Of course, each will have a company phone. And if I just follow my own advice to make this painless, it goes without saying that they will have their own printer and their own access control, but they will also have 2 TVs. And this is the room where the shareholders and the management team will be. So we will rename this to management. If I can, hello, click. Let's zoom out. And have this connected to our spaghetti pasta. Okay, great. So, and I hear you say, okay, you said we're gonna fix this spaghetti mess. How do we do that? Well, there is a button here, which is layout, and it will allow you to select one of the templates that they have, and it will show us a more cleaner path towards the VMs and the switches. So let's go with the first one. It will ask you about edges, but I always leave everything by default. I don't mess around because obviously I'm not too familiar with this software. I've used it probably 5 times in the last year. So right now the spaghetti is not a spaghetti anymore, and it looks much cleaner. With this, I'm pretty sure if you present to your CEO or the management team, they will really appreciate the work you've done. But there are a couple of more layouts that you could try to, impress whoever you're planning this infrastructure or whatever infrastructure. Obviously, you can go beyond what I've just demonstrated today. And if we go with organic, this one looks pretty meh. I don't know. Let's say classic. Okay, this one looks a little bit better. Circular. This one always mess up the nodes. It will just clutter them in one pixel. So as you can see, it might not be the best template. This one as well looks pretty messy. You know, you can obviously play around with those templates and choose whatever. This one also, it's not a good pick. Let's see this one. Picture, let's say compact. No. Series. No. Components. Nope. So I guess this one is the best choice. This one looks the more clean, more comprehensive. And if you want to go by node, you can simply double click on the node. It will open the node. You can go back by holding Ctrl Z and zoom in, zoom out. And that's about it. And that's pretty much it. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you find the video helpful, please leave a like, share with your friends, and please let me know in the comments if you would like to proceed in the future similar content. That being said, I wish you all good luck and see you next time.